Dysfunctional vet. We're standing over here at the corner where the red flag where we did our measurements originally. I used to use this piece of PVC pipe as the irrigation system to the back of the garden with a distribution head. See if I can zoom in on this little baby. Right there, that I believe has 8 exits off of it, and I would use that with micro sprinklers here and there. What we're discussing today is garden sanitation. If you look right here, you can clearly see that I have grass grown in and that sort of stuff. And this gardening is a bit difficult in that I have this canopy of forest right here that I can't really do much about. Moving back to the story, I have a lot of pine needles which apparently have not greatly affected the pH of the soil because it was neutral. Normally pine needles make things about 0. What I normally do is I wait for a rainy day, which we've had some, but I've been a little under the weather, and I come out here with a propane torch and I burn all this off while all this back here is wet, because I don't want that to catch on fire and burn. I don't want an out of control ground fire. Over here on the other side, you can see I have a lot of tall grass as well. However, I also have a whole lot of garlic growing in it, as you can see right there. So I'm going to come back and weed that out. Now that right there, that spot is my asparagus. And I'm going to come back, I'm going to cut all that down and weed that by hand as well. And then I actually burned that off last year and it did okay. And I may do the same thing again this year if I can get everything nice and wet. Now I have some weeds growing over here, and a weed is anything that's growing where you don't want it. So clover is a crop that people grow to put nitrogen in the ground, but if it's growing where you don't want it, clover is now a weed. So just generally speaking, I have a lot of plants in here that as I say, normally I use heat and burn them all off. Now I have these little molds and lichens down in here. I really like these things. They don't really enhance my gardening much, except of course they do consume nutrients. But what I do have over here, which is the point of my deal, I have this okra growing from last year. I'm going to want to pull this out of the ground, get as much dirt as I can off of it, and get this out of here. I do not want to grind this or rototill it back into the ground, because any diseases that are on this will now become a part of the soil, and it's easier to get rid of this than anything else. If this is composted properly, and a compost by proper means will be dealt with under composting, you can normally get rid of all the bacteria and fungus, any disease causing problem for your plants in the future. The other thing, I planted okra right here, so I don't want to plant okra again. I want to plant it in a different spot in order to reduce any problems with pathogens that may be in the soil and such. So what I'll do is I'll pull all this stuff up, and I will decide whether or not I'm going to burn this off. If it's dry enough out here, I won't. If it's still pretty damp, I'll come over here. It requires more propane to do that, but it's safer because it prevents the fire from spreading. One other note, I've tried to grow potatoes a few times here and there without success. We're going to be doing that this year using the tower method, and I still need to get these things underneath. Those are the, what are they? Wide Awake coffee. They're biodegradable, 100% breakdown, and since they've been out here for several months exposed to the weather, this is paper. It's a tough paper, but it's definitely, here's the coffee inside. This thing is breaking up like a spider web. But like I said, this is totally 100% biodegradable. so I just threw them out here. We'll revisit this over the next year and a half, 2 years, however long that I keep finding them whenever I turn the soil, and we'll look at how they break down. As you can see, I've mostly pulled up all the okra now, except for this last little bit. We have these two right here, and I want to point this out. I meant to mention this a moment ago when I pulled the first stuff up. Let's grab 2 of these. Let's pull them out of the ground. Let's knock the dirt off of them. Alright, there we go. We could dip these in water if we wanted to. But let's look at the roots. We'll set these right here. Let's look at these roots. If you look, these roots are in really healthy condition. We have the very fine root hairs here that take in nutrient. We've got these roots going nicely like so. We have some rot right down here, which would be consistent with the fact that this plant has been dead for several months. The exterior cuticle is sloughing off. But if you look, there are no enlarged nodes. There's no evidence of nematodes in here. And there is a grass that you can put into this stuff. You can grow on the ground here that nematodes, which are microscopic worms, we'll be covering that in more detail, can get into, and once they're in there, they're trapped. Now, this plant has a reasonably healthy root system. If you recall, in one of my previous videos, I'll try to remember to put the link in the description, I mentioned that this was a more intense form of gardening where plants are closer together, in fact much closer together than what's recommended by the book, with the idea of additional fertilizer, additional water, and a higher production of food. This method of farming is called intense gardening, and I will get more into detail in a specific chapter within this channel to deal with that. Dysfunctional